Kaneki was a lonely nerd who couldn't talk to girls without stuttering. However, after one bad date with a hottie, he becomes a half-ghoul emo who snacks on people like pasta and cries about it.
A bunch of helicopters circle a skyscraper in Tokyo as the building is apparently infested with some flesh-eating creatures called ghouls who look like humans but prey upon mankind instead. We see a psycho girl having an absolute foodgasm as she devours a pile of human bodies when a masked man approaches her, taunting her for her binge-eating patterns. Sadly, he's not smart enough to know that you should never interrupt a baddie's girl dinner, which is why the super hungry ghoul girl stands up in annoyance. Even though the masked man has orders to bring the girl back alive, he doesn't appreciate the remark she had about his dull personality, which is why he takes out some pliers to cut off a limb or two and keep it as a souvenir, because other than this, he's getting nowhere near a pretty arm or leg with this overbearing personality. But the girl didn't come here to play as she snatches his pliers and disappears in the blink of an eye like Batman, throwing away the pliers from the skyscraper's roof because she doesn't want to be contaminated by the guy's loser touch. The next morning, a shy bookworm student called Ken Kaneki sits in a cafe with his best friend Hideyoshi while the news of an unidentified ghoul being a literal man-eater and wolfing down tons of men plays in the background. Not paying attention to the dangerous world out there, the boys discuss ideas for Kaneki's first date, which all seem too mid and basic to Hideyoshi. Even though Kaneki doesn't reveal who his date is yet, Hideyoshi gets overexcited at the sight of the cafe's cute waitress Tuka and directly asks her if she's single. This guy has the audacity of a playboy on Bumble. As Tuka runs away awkwardly and Kaneki gets embarrassed, a gorgeous violet-haired girl in glasses walks into the cafe who's supposedly going on a date with Kaneki later, even though she's way out of his league. Cringing at Kaneki simping over the girl from afar, Hideyoshi pays his bill and leaves after saying bye to Tuka, who honestly doesn't give a fudge about him. Finally alone, Kaneki takes out his favorite book and steals a glance at his crush, RIZZES, surprised to see that she's also a fan of his favorite author, which convinces him that they're a match made in heaven if only finding love was this easy. Nevertheless, he decides to take her out to a steakhouse, after which they can go to a bookstore and be their nerd selves together. They're bonding at the steakhouse, which basically means that Kaneki got to see the goods under her shirt when he notices that she doesn't eat much and asks her about it. Responding to his question shyly, she admits that she's on a strict diet, but we all know that's code word for being anorexic. As she excuses herself to go to the ladies' room, my suspicions lean towards bulimia, while Kaneki sits in happiness at how great his date has been going so far. After the sun sets, she mentions living near the 20th ward, where most school attacks have been happening recently. Seeing how she's a damsel in distress who needs rescuing, Kaneki tries to rizz her up with his chivalry and offers to walk her home. On their way, Kaneki yaps about everything from his best friend Hideyoshi to his love for books to him being a responsible son of a single mom, while Tuka spots him and RIZZES heading off into a dark alley. Once they're all alone, Kaneki asks her out on a second date and RIZZES doesn't seem so shy now as she moves closer to him, burying her head in his chest and then coming closer to his ear as she confesses her feelings for him too. Instead of feeling like a man about to get laid, Kaneki feels like he needs to lie down somewhere because RIZZES has turned into the binge-eating ghoul we saw earlier and takes a chunk right out of his shoulder, Dahmer style. As Kaneki's eyes widen in horror, RIZZES starts to feel even more kinky as she reveals her kagune, which is a weapon-like appendage possessed by all ghouls and chases after Kaneki, who's now trying to escape this sicko chick, as she impales him multiple times and is about to start her "what I eat in a day's routine." Assuming that he's dead, a bunch of debris from the building above them falls on her, squishing her like the worthless bug she is. While still unconscious and low-key having a wet dream about RIZZES, Kaneki overhears talks about how some doctor named Kano might be performing an organ transplant on him using RIZZES' organs without taking anyone's consent, of course. The next time he wakes up in the hospital, one of his eyes looks exactly like RIZZES' soulless orbs moments before she was about to eat him. Unable to eat anything that the hospital serves him, Kaneki hides in his bed and refuses to see Hideyoshi, who's visited him multiple times. Well, we can't really blame him here because hospital food sucks anyway. The doctors discharge him as he's fully recovered, despite his complaints that everything tastes like ash to him. When he gets home, Green Flag Hideyoshi has left him a parcel of his favorite food, but it's sadly of no use to Kaneki anymore. Hearing about ghouls' eating habits on the TV, Kaneki starts to lose his marbles as he quickly forces himself to eat the hamburger Hideyoshi brought him, but fails, throwing up endlessly like a pregnant lady with morning sickness. Crying alone at his house like me after a breakup, Kaneki ignores Hideyoshi's calls and texts, and finally leaves the house one night to attend the signing event of his favorite author. But fate is just against this guy as the signing is ended by the time he gets there, and being surrounded by so many humans make him feel like he's starving, like me, hours after starting a diet. Rushing back home, he panics as his ghoul eye shows up, making his suspicions grow stronger. To finally test if he's turned from prey to predator, Kaneki tries to stab himself with a knife only for the blade to break and fall, as normal blades can't inflict any harm upon ghouls. Talk about a first date gone wrong. Stepping out of his house while trying to contain the beast within him, Kaneki smells something super yummy round the corner and runs mindlessly towards it, only to see a ghoul eating a dead man's intestines. Realizing that a mangled corpse is equivalent to Gordon Ramsay's beef Wellington for him now, Kaneki trips even more while the ghoul offers him a piece. In an instant, a young guy named Nishiki, who seems pretty mean, shows up because he doesn't like other ghouls hunting in his territory. After killing the kind ghoul, he holds Kaneki by his throat and is about to end him too when our girl Tuka appears out of nowhere, ordering Nishiki to back off because Anteku is supposed to decide which ghouls can operate in this area now. Oh, wow, this girl is just full of surprises. Watch out, Hideyoshi. As she beats up Nishiki and sends him running like an injured dog, Tuka offers Kaneki the dead man's hand to eat as he seems to be dying to eat it, while also desperately holding onto his humanity and restricting himself from tasting human flesh. Acting like a girl who has no extra time to waste, Tuka stuffs Kaneki's mouth with the dead man's organs to help him with his first meal and put him out of his misery. After Kaneki still acts like an ungrateful prick and calls all ghouls monsters, Tuka beats him up too and inquires what was his life like before turning into a ghoul, because she feels envious of humans who live with no pain, enjoying foods without any fear of corporations like CCG and other ghouls. Looking down on him for being a weak half-breed, Tuka is about to kill him too when the cafe's manager, who is also a ghoul and believes in helping his kind, tells her to take it easy. I didn't know ghouls could look like such wholesome grandpas. Seating Kaneki inside the cafe, he serves Kaneki a cup of coffee, which he's able to drink with no problem, as only something as great as coffee has the ability of being acceptable for both humans and ghouls. Knowing that coffee won't be enough to sustain Kaneki, the old man gives him an envelope and promises to give him more if he wants it before sending him home, leaving Kaneki with the choice of embracing or fighting his ghoul side. Kaneki's at home with his stomach grumbling with hunger as loud as my brother's trashy rock band when RIZZES ghost haunts him, enticing him to give in to his cravings. Staying strong and covering his ghoul eye with an eye patch like an off-brand pirate, Kaneki drags himself to campus to catch up on his classes. Guess RIZZES didn't eat the nerd out of him when Hideyoshi clings on to him like a needy ex and starts to catch him up. Reliving a memory from his childhood, Kaneki remembers that even though he may come off as a goof, Hideyoshi is actually quite compassionate and empathetic, as he notices the smallest details about people to get an idea of the darkness they hide within. Realizing that his bromance is at stake, Kaneki contemplates giving away his humanity while Hideyoshi takes him to his senior, who can give them his notes. Seeing that the senior is none other than Nishiki and that they've interrupted his Netflix and chill session with a girl, possibly a prey, Kaneki starts to panic. But Nishiki acts normal, inviting Hideyoshi to his house after classes. Aware of Nishiki's carnivorous tendencies, Kaneki insists on tagging along like that one annoying cousin who shows up uninvited to all your parties. As Kaneki is starting to get impressed by how seamlessly Nishiki eats with humans and blends in society as a normal college student, Nishiki shows his true colors by knocking Hideyoshi unconscious and beating him up, assuming that Kaneki planned to eat him all along. As he kicks Hideyoshi's adorable face with his feet until it starts to bleed, Kaneki finally mans up and tries to fight back, only to be thrown into the air by a Bruce Lee-style flying kick. After getting beaten to a pulp and lying helplessly on the floor like a wet rag, Kaneki watches Nishiki unleash his Kaguni as he's about to crush Hideyoshi's skull. Flashbacks of how Hideyoshi has always looked out for him when no one else did makes Kaneki grow a pair and develop his Kagune, which impales Nishiki with such rage that he's left unconscious, looking like a worn-out sponge with many holes. However, the sight of a helpless Hideyoshi lying by himself awakens RIZZES' hunger within Kaneki to such an extent that he's ready to eat his own best friend. So much for friendship that lasts a lifetime, until Tuka gets there to knock some sense into him. The next thing Kaneki's aware of is waking up under the cafe's manager's care, where Hideyoshi has been bandaged and kept safe to protect Kaneki from a lifelong regret of feeding on his only friend. Realizing that he's no longer hangry because he was fed human flesh in his sleep, Kaneki feels like he belongs in neither the human nor the ghoul world. As he's throwing his self-pity party for one, the manager assures him that he can have the best of both worlds just like Hannah Montana by joining the Antiku organization, where he might find a path for himself. Sounds like a cult to me. As they walk away to make some coffee for themselves and have their Gilmore Girls moment, Hideyoshi opens his eyes as he's been eavesdropping all along. Meanwhile, a kooky-looking old man named Mato and his partner Eamon investigate the 20th Ward building where RIZZES and the masked guy aka Jason were last seen together. Taking advantage of the rainy weather, which is known to dull ghouls' senses, Mad Mato finds the pliers RIZZES had once thrown away just for the vibe. Our big bad wolf Jason pays a visit to the doctor who initially made the limb-cutting pliers for him and asked for a replacement, while also terrorizing the doctor's wife and daughter, who practically wet their pants at the sight of him. Meanwhile, spending time with manager Yoshimura teaches Kaneki about Anteku, which is the cafe that serves as a meeting place and safe haven for ghouls of 20th Ward, while also serving human customers. Starbucks wishes they could pull off something like that. Yoshimura proves that he's not like the other ghouls by admitting that he likes humans before sending Kaneki downstairs to the cafe to serve serve as a waiter alongside Tuka. There, Hideyoshi seems to be acting normally, pretending that all of them were caught in some mess that Tuka rescued them from. As soon as he leaves, Tuka coldly warns Kaneki that if Hideyoshi finds out about them being ghouls, she'll kill him on the spot, meaning that Hideyoshi's life is still in danger, teaching us the lesson to not sit with bad company. The doctor's wife Ryuko and daughter Hinami resort to Anteku for refuge, where Toka sends them to Yoshimura while briefing Kaneki about Suits, not the show with Meghan Markle, but the soulless corporate men whose purpose is to hunt down ghouls and end their race. Meanwhile, Amon presents the pliers he found at the CCG meeting, identifying them as a quink weapon, which basically means any object that can cut or tear a ghoul's skin, solidifying his need for validation from authoritative figures, probably because his parents didn't love him enough in his childhood. As Kaneki struggles to eat normal food which tastes like armpits to him, Yoshimura teaches him some tricks before giving him some sugar cubes that are probably laced with someone's insides, as having them in his coffee will help keep Kaneki's hunger at bay. Handing Kaneki the duty of procuring food tonight, Yoshimura assures him that they can survive without harming anyone, and hooks him up with a guy named Yomo, who takes him to a high bridge. It takes a while for Kaneki's slow brain to catch on to the fact that Anteku feeds on the bodies of those who jump off this bridge and commit suicide so that they don't have to kill anyone. As Eamon and Mato hunt ghouls left and right like Megan Fox and Jennifer's body, the news reaches Yoshimura, who instructs Tuka to take Kaneki to a shady part of town and get his mask made by an eccentric but mellow goth ghoul named Yuta. As Yuta measures Kaneki and tries to find out his deepest, darkest secrets about the kind of women he's into, Kaneki learns how hard Tuka works as a member of Anteku in her efforts to blend into human society while bearing a constant risk to her life. Feeling like a useless piece of crap in comparison to others at Anteku, Kaneki inquires Tuka about Hinami's situation because he wants to help out the young girl who has to live away from her father now. Changing the subject, Toka teaches Kaneki that he must wear a mask to ensure that the investigators or ghoul hunter everyone refers to as doves mustn't see his face or they'll kill him without a second thought. And here I thought that being a girl was hard. Turns out being a ghoul is even harder. As Kaneki catches Hinami eating human flesh like it's a happy meal, he ignores his disgust and serves Hinami some coffee as an apology. With Hinami's interest in reading serving as an icebreaker for them, Kaneki quickly befriends Hinami and distracts her from the fact that she can be fatherless at any point by promising to teach her new words and stories. As the doctor's family leaves Anteku with wide smiles on their faces thanks to Tuka and Kaneki, a new zesty ghoul shows up at the cafe in a suit so vibrant it hurts my eyes. The fruity man's name is Tsukiyama, and Tuka doesn't seem so happy by his presence, considering the fact that she calls him a literal pig. Ignoring her hostility, Tsukiyama moves closer to Kaneki, noticing that he's a newbie at the cafe. As he takes one long sniff from Kaneki's body and gives me the ick with his creepy behavior, he discovers that Kaneki doesn't smell like the other ghouls. Protective as always because deep down she's a softie, Tuka gets Tsukiyama off their backs and tells him to return some other time when Yoshimura is around. It's later revealed that along with Rise the binge eater, this guy Tsukiyama is another reason why the 20th ward has been on the Dubs' radar recently, as he's known as the gourmet. This twisted, rich, spoiled brat enjoys eating specialty foods like human eyes from virgin girls as part of his fancy dinners in his huge mansion. Where was he at the time of the French Revolution? Meanwhile, we're shocked to see that even someone as nonchalant and cool as Tuka struggles in high school as she forcefully eats her friend's food to show that she's normal, internally wanting to end her life because she despises being a ghoul. Later on, she hides in the ladies' room, doing a reverse bulimic routine of trying extremely hard to not throw up the normal human food she just ate because she secretly wishes to be human. This explains why she's such a bully to Kaneki. On the other hand, Tsukiyama wastes no time in targeting Kaneki as he pays him a surprise visit at his university, displaying extra interest in him as if this guy has ever liked anyone besides his own reflection. As Tsukiyama tries to bond with Kaneki over his reading habits like a desperate guy in my Tinder DMs, Kaneki lets down his guard because he's a gullible idiot, and it seems like he actually enjoys being catfished by attractive and mysterious ghouls. Convincing Kaneki that they're soulmates and have the same favorite author, Tsukiyama invites Kaneki to a cafe run by a fellow passionate reader where their favorite author also shows up from time to time. To fully trap Kaneki, Tsukiyama uses one last move of gaining the sympathy vote, confiding in Kaneki about how much he misses discussing books with Rise, whose personality reflects in Kaneki too. This guy would play the role of a home-wrecking male best friend perfectly. As Kaneki considers the possibility of accepting Tsukiyama's invitation after getting off from work, Yoshimura sends him with Yomo, who wants to recreate the Karate Kid with him by training him to defend himself from the doves if it ever comes down to it. After giving him a nice beatdown and taking out all his frustration on poor Kaneki, Yomo takes him to a bar where he meets Itori, the red-haired baddie who owns the bar and has been curious to meet Kaneki this whole time. For someone with zero game and the physique of a prepubescent boy, this guy somehow scores the hottest chicks, as Itori entertains herself by spilling blood on Kaneki and taking off his eye patch to see his one ghoul eye. She makes it up by telling him about another half-ghoul like him who is basically a freak of nature. If by the rarest chance a human and ghoul manage to have a baby together, that will be one gruesome wedding night. Its abilities will be far greater than a pure ghoul, but no one knows yet if such a wonder even exists. In response to Kaneki's curiosity about RIZZES, Itori shares conspiracy theories about her accidental death like two unemployed YouTubers, claiming that someone plotted her death and staged it as an accident to cover up the murder. Having enough of her misleading gossip, Yomo gives Itori a shut-up call, but Kaneki has already started overthinking like me after a date because the thought of someone being powerful enough to kill a ghoul as troublesome as RIZZES scares him. On his date with Tsukiyama, aka the Salbe of Ghouls, Kaneki questions what Tsukiyama and RIZZES used to talk about during their meetings, which triggers Tsukiyama's PTSD about how RIZZES had mocked him for copying humans and claims of having taste and a palate when all he really is a flesh-eating freak. As Kaneki accidentally cuts himself, Tsukiyama acts like a true gentleman and covers the wound with his handkerchief, offering to take Kaneki to a place RIZZES visited quite often. But what he really is a creep who belongs on the sex offenders list, as he sniffs the heck out of that bloody handkerchief in the men's room later on, making Kaneki shower later, and I highly suspect that he was being watched from a peephole during this, and dressing him up in a fancy suit. Tsukiyama serves him coffee before presenting him on a stage to a room full of maniacs like him. Turns out that Kaneki is being served as the main course of the night because his blood apparently has a unique smell and taste that makes all the ghouls drool like me at the sight of Henry Cavill. As Tsukiyama delivers his version of an Oscar speech at this ditty party, Kaneki feels betrayed as if going on a date with a ghoul went so well for him the first time. To carve up Kaneki like a turkey on Thanksgiving, an obese ghoul enters the arena looking like a sumo who was dropped multiple times as a baby. As he swings his saw in the air to get Kaneki, the crowd cheers and hoots as if they are at the Super Bowl game. After dodging the retard monster's deadly blows directed at him, Kaneki falls into a puddle of blood, while Tsukiyama waits for him to release his kaguni so that the real fun would begin. As Kaneki is picked up and strangled, he realizes that his coffee was drugged, which activates his ghoul eye. Seeing that Kaneki is much rarer than he anticipated, Tsukiyama ends the banquet and serves the fatso to the crowd as their delicacy. Playing the whole thing off as a harmless prank and apologizing for it, Tsukiyama lies to Kaneki yet again because he doesn't want to share this snack with others. Traumatized by the only ghoul party he's ever been invited to, Kaneki still faces nightmares of people fighting each other to eat him up, and not in the naughty way that he would have enjoyed. Meanwhile, all the ghoul customers at Anteku can talk about is how unsafe 20th Ward has become for them ever since the dub started playing Heroes recently. As if they weren't casually tearing apart human organs days ago, Kaneki is still listening in on these conversations like the FBI when Yoshimura gives him an off for the day. Noticing that Tuka didn't cover her shift today, Kaneki asks about her and learns that she is sick. As if opening a homeless shelter for ghouls wasn't charitable enough, Yoshimura also tries to play Cupid by advising Kaneki to pay her a visit in her room upstairs so that she won't be left alone in her sickness. After entering Tuka's room, Kaneki realizes that Hinami is also there as a third wheel who will also leave no chance to use him as a free tutor. This kid is extremely illiterate, considering the fact that her father is an esteemed doctor. Watching Kaneki play Big Brother with the fatherless kid melts Tuka's stone-cold heart, which is why she starts to prepare coffee for them. Quickly dismissing Kaneki's concerns like an emotionally unavailable love interest, Tuka mentions that she fell sick due to overeating. Been there, done that, but Kaneki doesn't buy her bag full of BS. Thankfully for us, their pathetic banter is interrupted when the doorbell rings due to the unexpected arrival of Yuriko, Toka's human friend from school who unknowingly triggered the whole fiasco in the first place. Concerned about Tuka's health and absence from school, she stopped by to check up on her friend, but when she sees an older guy, aka Kaneki, roaming around in her room, she gets the wrong idea because her mind is in the gutter and abruptly leaves after dropping off the pot full of human food she cooked for Tuka. Doesn't this girl know any non-food related friendship gestures? Maybe try a friendship bracelet or matching tattoos next time? Even in Yoriko's absence, Kaneki watches Tuka painfully finish all the food because she doesn't want to waste the effort and love her friend put into it, which gives him the idea that Yoriko must mean a lot to Tuka. Meanwhile, Tsukiyama has been playing Home Alone in his grand mansion while scouring all his books to look for the perfect way to enjoy Kaneki's meat. As he finally comes up with the most disgusting way to eat Kaneki and fantasizes about it in the most pervy manner, I start to hate him even more because he's, hands down, the most despicable ghoul I've seen so far. After getting his body sore from a training session with Yomo, Kaneki is heading home when he comes across Nishiki, who has just returned from the hospital since the spanking Kaneki gave him. However, this guy seems to have tough luck today too, as he's getting kicked and shoved by 3 random me in a dark alley who apparently plan to kill him shortly. Despite all the PTSD Nishiki caused for Kaneki and Hideyoshi, Kaneki approaches the men and timidly suggests them to not overdo their rage room routine. It turns out that Kaneki just has to be exposed to all the sick things going on in Tokyo as he discovers that the three men are fellow ghouls who intend to cannibalize on Nishiki and eat him to satiate their hunger. As he intervenes and effortlessly dodges their attacks due to the ninja moves Yomo has taught him, Kaneki is able to rescue even a dirtbag like Nishiki. As Kaneki carries his sorry butt to his dorm room, Nishiki's human wifey Kimi is already waiting for him, making Kaneki super shocked about why would a sweet human girl fall for a rude ghoul like Nishiki. Talking to her and prying into their relationship enlightens Kaneki on how Kimi understands Nishiki's need for human flesh to survive, and she has learned to accept it as long as he doesn't go after her parents or siblings. As Kimi cries and plays her woman card to get Kaneki's sympathy, he agrees to help Nishiki with his feeding so that he wouldn't die out of starvation. However, the night doesn't go too well for Kimi, who is abducted by Tsukiyama right after her meeting with Kaneki. As Kaneki later finds a note and rose left at his doorstep, he knows that only one person is capable of acting so gay, and it's none other than our loud and proud Tsukiyama. The note contains an invitation to dinner at midnight with Kimi, which low-key sounds like Tsukiyama wants a threesome. Still weak after all the slaps and punches he's been taking lately, Nishiki comes to Kaneki's place because Kimi still hasn't returned home and learns about her kidnapping. Joining Kaneki on his messed up date, Nishiki tags along to rescue the pure love of his corrupt life. On the other hand, Tsukiyama is reenacting the purge as he has Kimi tied up on an altar at an abandoned church while he plays haunting music on the piano to really sell himself as the super threatening villain. Finally gaining an audience, he discloses his plans to eat Kaneki while he feeds on Kimi's flesh, because apparently this guy watches the human centipede every weekend. As fighting breaks out between these boys, Tsukiyama single-handedly manhandles both Nishiki and Kaneki because he's used to handling so many guys at once. What takes him by surprise though is when Tuka makes an entrance out of nowhere and slashes his fruity face. Even though he heals within seconds, Tsukiyama is slightly shaken to see that a girl managed to give him a scar after so many years. As she starts attacking him relentlessly, he starts reminiscing about her eyes when she was just a kid and starts hitting on her too. This guy is as desperate as my useless attempts to save my career. Just when Tuka and Kaneki start to think that they have this molester under their control, he astonishes them by landing deadly blows which break their limbs like a bunch of toothpicks. As Kaneki screams in pain, Tsukiyama pushes his filthy hand into his gut and gets his first, most awaited taste of Kaneki's rare blood. Letting out his Kagune, Tsukiyama impales Tuka, who he finds weakened by Kaneki's affection. Looks like Tuka wasn't as sneaky as she thought. Moving on to Kimi, Tsukiyama moves Kimi's shirt off her shoulder and notices an unflattering scar. Watching his main piece about to be taken away from him forever, Nishiki thinks of his tough childhood when he resisted eating humans because he empathized with them. But it was his older sister who raised him alone and taught him to survive, always looking out for him, until she fell in love with a red flag human who turned her in and got her killed. That had been enough for Nishiki to never trust anyone again until he met Kimi, who was practically a lost lamb at the time, so he decided to keep her around in case he felt extra peckish someday. But their romance sizzled out after he slept with her, just like how most situationships end these days. It was after his fight with Kaneki that Nishiki was driven crazy by hunger and revealed his true nature to Kimi, instantly regretting it because he expected to meet an end similar to his sister's. But Kimi surprises him by exposing her shoulder to him and letting him eat a chunk while she trauma dumps about how he stuck with her when she lost her family, which is why she's ready to sacrifice herself to let him live. Feeling genuine love from a female besides his sister, Nishiki fell head over heels for her then and there and refused to eat more from her body. Fueled by this core memory, he charges at Tsukiyama despite his weak state and keeps fighting him until he also gets stabbed by Tsukiyama's Kagune. As Nishiki's game is about to be over, Kaneki comes up with the idea of fueling Tuka's strength by offering her a bite out of him so that she'll be able to fight Tsukiyama with her Kagune. Jealous that someone is tasting his most prized possession, Tsukiyama goes berserk, but Tuka has already switched to killer mode. Now that Tuka has received both an ego and strength boost, she unleashes her flamboyant Kagune on Tsukiyama to put him in place, when he really belongs behind bars in my opinion. Enraged at Tsukiyama, Tuka skillfully dodges all his moves, tearing his arm apart and finishing him off before he can stagger his way to Kaneki. Relieved to see Kimi survive this, Nishiki awakens Kimi even though he's on the brink of death himself. But it looks like this night of horrors isn't over yet for these star-crossed lovers, as Tuka declares that she can't keep Kimi alive because she knows their secret of being ghouls. Reminding Tuka that Kimi is as dear to Nishiki as Yoriko is to her, Kaneki tries to prevent Tuka from doing an act that'll make her resent herself for a long time. But she's in baller mode now as she shoots blades at Kimi anyway, making Nishiki act as her shield and sacrificing his life for a 1-month-long situationship. As Kimi takes off her blindfold and faces Tuka, she compliments the beauty of her Kagune instead of seeing her as a monster, which throws even a stubborn one like Tuka off her axis as she disappears in confusion without taking Kimi's life. This girl really has enough riz to make the meanest ghouls blush. In hopes of getting laid for his display of bravery, Nishiki also shows some movement to signal that he's still alive, bringing tons of relief to both Kimi and Kaneki. Days after their scarring night at the church, which will probably make them never want to pray again, the ghouls bring some changes to Anteku. Hideyoshi is happily enjoying his coffee there one day when he's shocked to see Nishiki also working there as a waiter. I guess he joined a band of misfit ghouls too. But the waiter that Hideyoshi's truly interested in is Tuka, who hasn't shown up to work since that night and mostly remains shut in her room because apparently that was the first compliment she has ever received in all of her sad and sorry life. As Hideyoshi heads out for class, Hinami rebels against her mother and storms off like an attention-seeking brat because she no longer wants to be away from her father. What the kid doesn't know is that even after Jason got a Quinkwe weapon from her father to get back at RIZZES, he didn't appreciate the doctor operating as a puppet for humans, which is why he killed him with the same pliers he crafted with his hands. As Jason throws the doctor's wounded body out on the street, Eamon and Mato are already waiting for him, prepared to take down this S-rated target with Quinkwe weapons of their own. As Hinami acts like a wild child, insisting on visiting her father immediately, her beloved home is getting destroyed during Jason's combat with the Dubs, which he walks out of once he has grown bored and broken Mato's Quinkwe. Unaware that her daddy is dead, Hinami cheers up when her mom promises to buy her a present for her patience and good behavior. On the other hand, Kaneki apologizes to Tuka for acting like a smarty pant and bringing up Yoriko during that vulnerable moment, making the grumpy girl smile after a long time. As Hinami and Ryoko go to the bookstore to buy Hinami a present, it starts to rain, and Ryoko notices two suits asking around for a mother and daughter duo, which seems a lot like them. Even though she switches her path, the suits follow her when Hinami suddenly claims that she can smell her dad nearby and runs blindly in the direction of the scent, causing Ryoko to chase after her. I can already tell that I'm being set up for a disaster here. As Hinami cluelessly steps into a desolate alley, she is disappointed to see some suspicious men in suits instead of her loving father. Now that she has led her mother into a trap as well, she acts confused as Ryuko opens her kagune to surround Hinami before she instructs her to run back to Anteku. As Hinami leaves the alley with remorse in teary eyes, the arrogant prick Mato taunts Ryuko's act of motherly love while Hinami runs across the streets, searching for any kind adult that might be able to save her mom from the shady suits. Just as she's fallen down on the street in despair and has literally hit rock bottom, Hinami is spotted by Kaneki, who listens to her plea and starts running in Ryuko's direction. Meanwhile, Mato gives Ryuko the surprise of using her own husband's kagune as a weapon against her, giving domestic violence a whole new meaning and breaking the news of her being a widow in the most insensitive manner. By the time Kaneki gets there with Hinami, all he can do to help the kid is cover her eyes and prevent her from having a front row seat to her mom's execution. Later on, Tuka returns to Anteku to find it closed for the day and all staff members sitting mournfully in a room. When she learns of the tragedy that's befallen Hinami, she loses her cool completely, as she doesn't want Hinami to be relocated to the unsafe 24th ward just because the douchebag doves have seen her face. Toka wants to avenge Ryuko's death and kill all doves, but Yoshimura forbids it because it will put all ghouls of the 20th ward in danger. As Tuka cries over some resurfaced issues, Kaneki keeps blaming himself for being a wuss and not doing anything to prevent Hinami from being an orphan. After deciding to delegate Jason to some other investigator and going after minor ghouls in the 20th ward, Mato leaves the CCG building while Amon and the other two suits are tracked by Tuka, who wishes to settle the score. As Tuka attacks them with her mask on, she kills the first one effortlessly and is about to finish off Amon too when Mato shows up there with his ugly old crooked face. As he rubs Ryuko's death in Tuka's face and provokes her, he gives Amon a valuable lesson on how to drag a fight with a ghoul to exhaust them to bring them to their weakest point. Demonstrating this on Tuka, he gets her with his quink while also shamelessly inquiring about Hinami's whereabouts. This oldie is so insufferable that he makes me root for the ghouls despite being a human. After Tuka barely escapes Mato and returns to Anteku with a bleeding arm, Yoshimura disowns her because she acted rashly and went against the greater good of their kind. Wow, this guy means business. Upholding his no-nonsense principles, Yoshimura instructs Kaneki to no longer intervene in the fight that Tuka has picked with the doves because the Anteku is no longer responsible for her. As she storms off, Kaneki acts like a simp and follows her, insisting that he needs to make his own choices, dismissing Yoshimura's strict warnings. As Kaneki insists on bandaging her wound, Toka practices the whole misunderstood lone wolf routine until he reasons with her that if she dies in this stupid showdown with the doves, he'll be devastated. Needy for words of affirmation, Tuka listens to Kaneki, who still isn't ready to kill any human or ghoul but wants to help out anyway. Meanwhile, Mato doesn't even show up at his employee's funeral, where other team leads try to poach Eamon by pointing out that there's hardly any method to his partner's madness, as Eamon trains endlessly like a K-pop idol. Tuka and Kaneki plot against the doves to get back at them for the injustice they brought upon Hinami. Around the same time, Maeda receives eyewitness reports of Hinami being sighted at an elementary school, which causes him to draw the conclusion that the masked female ghoul who attacked him and Ryuko are somehow related, and this is a trap set up for him. Nevertheless, this sadistic grandpa thinks of ways to use his quinkwe there, while Kaneki finally gets his super cool mask from Yuta, which means that he's ready to get down and dirty. Ready to hit two birds with one stone, the birds being Hinami and Tuka, Mano and Amon make their way to the waterway near the reported elementary school with many new weapons and the confidence of Bella Hadid. As Tuka plays hard to get with Kaneki, she overhears clutter noise from Hinami's room and discovers that the kid has disappeared, possibly gone after her parents' murderers in a fit of rage. While Tuka and Kaneki look for Hinami, they hear her cry coming from the waterway area, which causes Tuka to sprint in her direction, oblivious to the fact that Amon is coming after her as if she owes him money. Due to Tuka's exceptional speed, Amon falls behind, held back by Kaneki. Tuka finds Hinami clutching onto a bag which smells like Ryuko, probably because it contains her insides within it. As Hinami weeps for her mother and demands to be taken to her parents, Tuka gives her a hug and sobs with her, unaware that their Hallmark movie is about to turn into a gory slasher really soon. As it begins to rain, Mato surfaces behind them, recognizing Tuka even though she's not wearing her mask. But this time, Tuka is also aware that Mato can use his quinkwe only to a limited extent at this location, which is why she hits him as hard as reality hit me as soon as I turned 20. On the other hand, Kaneki makes a complete fool out of himself by only being able to punch Amon once, which I'm pretty sure caused him more pain than Amon, who is built like a Greek god. As Amon blames ghouls for his friend's death, Toka also ironically blames Mato for Ryuko's death, highlighting the animosity that humans and ghouls hold for each other without ever making an effort to meet in the middle. The only one who understands this is Kaneki, who is stuck in the middle of being half human and half ghoul, which is why he empathizes with both sides. He tries to convey the truth to Amon, but he keeps throwing him around like a javelin because he has only known ghouls to be evil. Meanwhile, the tables have turned completely at the waterway because Mato has used the combined power of both of Hinami's parents Kagune to humble Toka into believing that she is not as invincible as she thinks. Moving on to Hinami, who will definitely need a therapist for the rest of her life if she makes it out of here alive tonight, Mato holds her in his grip like she's a bug that he's about to crush. Realizing that Amon is not ready to break the cycle of grief and that humans and ghouls won't stop taking each other's lives, Kaneki learns to roll with the punches and lets RIZZES' ravenous spirit within him take the wheel. Within seconds, he unzips his mask to reveal his beastly teeth as he pounces on Amon's chiseled shoulders and takes a bite. Finally taking Kaneki seriously, Amon pushes him away while Kaneki's hunger entices him to go on a rampage, revealing his Kagune. Realizing that he's starting to lose control and might kill Amon, Kaneki begs him to run away while he tries to restrain his ghoul tendencies, but Amon is a true soldier who will never run away from the battlefield, even if it costs his life. Repeating that he doesn't want to turn into a murderer, Kaneki fails to keep his Kagune in check as it slams Amon, worsening his injuries. Having enough of the pain Mato has inflicted on her loved ones, Hinami hits the ghoul version of puberty and develops her Kagune, which is even more powerful than Mato's Quinky. She cuts off his hand and leg to make sure that he'll spend the rest of his day in a retirement home instead of hunting ghouls, and refuses to murder him because even she is more mature than Tuka. As sad girl hours begin for Hinami, Mato uses whatever strength he has left to attack her, forcing Tuka to finish him Mortal Kombat style. Even as he is slowly dying, Mato keeps insulting ghouls, reinforcing that he needs to stop the one-eyed freak. But multivitamins can take you only so far, which is why his heart finally gives in and he passes away. As Amon watches Kaneki fight with himself like my crazy aunt in her late 90s, he begins to question why a ghoul would act out of character and let a human enemy walk free. About dang time, brother. But it's clear that he's too slow for a high-ranked dove, as RIZZES has already taken over Kaneki at this point. Seeing another ghoul in disguise at the scene triggers Kaneki so much that he stabs the ghoul with his Kagune, only to realize that it's his own mentor Yomo. As Yomo delivers Yoshimura's message of asking him to return home, Kaneki comes back to his senses like girls after fully developing their frontal lobe, and accepts the meat that Yomo has brought him to stop his PMSing. On the other hand, Toka gets freaky as she takes off Mato's glove and is surprised when she sees a gold ring on his finger. I guess he was a Beyonce fan. Toka is still hyperventilating when Kaneki and Yomo get there to carry Hinami back home. A while later, Amon arrives at the waterway to witness Mato's corpse floating in the sewer like someone's poop, which absolutely breaks his heart as he has lost yet another friend at the hands of ghouls. As he lets out a heartbroken scream in his despair and grief, Hinami wonders if she really deserves to be alive because Mato's words have gotten to her head. That's when Kaneki reminds her that even during her last moments, all Ryuko wanted was for Hinami to live, so she must respect her mother's wishes and stop being a crybaby. It looks like we're having a blast from the past as Amon recalls the day he had first met Mato and joined him as a partner. He had been surprised at first at Mato's off-putting techniques and striking instincts, which made him think for a moment that he's been assigned to babysit CCG's crackhead nutcase. But his experience taught him that Mato was just as accurate as he was witty, even though he missed no chance to diss a ghoul. It's been almost 2 months since Mato took a permanent vacation, and Amon is slowly starting to adjust to his life without his eccentric partner. It back. Hinami has also come to terms with her parents' death as she shows Kaneki her new disguise to avoid coming under the Doves' radar again. A while after Hinami had moved in with Tuka, she found a wounded bird and nursed it back to health. If only she could do the same with her parents. As Hinami leaves with Yomo to buy some stuff for her new pet bird that she calls Loser, Tuka mentions to Kaneki that she has no intention of letting a bird live at her place because she's low-key scared of birds, as if she isn't a scary, vicious animal herself. Acting like Joe Goldberg, Kaneki silently observes everyone at Anteku and has been feeling positive lately about how things are returning back to normal. Life is not so sunshine and rainbows for Eamon though, as when he pays a visit to Mato's grave, he swears to avenge his death and unalive Toka with his own hands. This bit is getting a bit exhaustive at this point. Just break the cycle already. Kaneki spills the tea on what happened the night of Mato's death to Nosy Itori, who jokes about how strong Kaneki must be to have pierced through Yomo's sturdy body, as he's literally the ghoul version of the Man of Steel. Ignoring her jokes because they low-key suck, Kaneki seeks information on Rise and finds out that she'd made somewhat of a wildcard entry in the 20th ward, which means not many people know where she came from, except for the fact that she previously hunted in the 11th ward. On his way home that night, Kaneki bumps into a boy whose smell really resonates to him. I bet that he's wearing Dior Sauvage. What Kaneki doesn't know is that the boy has pickpocketed his wallet and is currently going through his stuff to learn his identity. But even the boy faces disappointment from Kaneki as he's super broke and has no money in his wallet. As news breaks out of CCG's decision to increase their number of investigators in the 11th and 20th ward, Hideyoshi brings up to Kaneki how deaths by ghouls have amplified in the last few days. Sweating like a stripper in a fire show, Kaneki watches Hideyoshi connecting the dots to what the ghoul community has been up to lately. Now that Kaneki has gone as pale as a white chick from Vermont, Hideyoshi plays the whole thing off by acting as his usual goofy self and claiming that his interest in ghouls comes from a manga he's been reading recently. Looks like Kaneki just missed his chance to come clean. With 2 new men assigned to the 20th ward, Eamon is taken away to form a special task force that's supposed to operate in the 11th ward. The corporate hustle never stops. As rumors go around about the possible outbreak of war between ghouls and humans, Tuka thinks of Mato's wedding ring and considers the fact that he must have had a family waiting on him too. Too late now, she confides in Kaneki about how she shared a pet bird with her younger brother as a kid. Toka and her baby bro Ayato got a lot of love and attention from their affectionate father, which makes me wonder what happened to him that turned Toka into such a piece of work. Seeing that it's trauma dump hour at Anteku, Kaneki also talks about losing both his parents at a really young age. However, their Who's More Sad contest is interrupted by Hinami, who is here to flaunt her new haircut that she low-key copied from Toka. After learning that it was Tuka who cut Hinami's hair, Kaneki compliments her hairdresser skills, making her blush like she's wearing rare beauty. As Hideyoshi sips his coffee that night, he overhears Jason passing by, swearing to take revenge from Rise. At the same time, a bunch of ninja ghouls from the 11th ward, led by a guy named Banju, land at the 20th ward, also looking for Rise, who's apparently the most wanted ghoul chick. As if all this drama wasn't enough, the most menacing ghoul of the 11th ward, who's even more powerful than Banju, decides to head for the 20th ward to secure Rise, and it's none other than Tuka's estranged baby bro, Ayato. On the other hand, we have a band of ghouls called the Aogiri Tree, who are led by Tatara and his side piece Ito, and together they have eliminated a whole branch of the 11th ward dubs, sending a message to CCG that they're unstoppable, like that Sia song. As Yoshimura and Yomo examine the leftovers of what were once dubs, they understand this is also the work of a one-eyed ghoul, which definitely isn't Kaneki because there's no way our MC is a bad guy. Talking of Kaneki, he's polishing dishes at Anteku like a dutiful 60s housewife when Banju steps in with his men because his acquaintance, Rise, talked about coming here often. Smelling Rise's scent on Kaneki, Banju goes from Jekyll to Hyde because he is as jealous of Kaneki as I am of every person with glass skin. As Kaneki tries to clarify that he's not with Rise, I like how he doesn't mention that he did try to get with Rise, except she only saw him as dinner. He accidentally hits Banjo with his head, knocking him unconscious, giving him minus aura for life. When Rise's hopeless lapdog Banjo awakens, Kaneki lies to him that Rise isn't around anymore because he doesn't want to disappoint Rise's biggest sim by delivering the news of her death to him. Banju tells Kaneki to warn Rise if he ever sees her, as she must run as far as possible from Aogiri Tree, who took over the 11th ward and used it as their front in their war against the dubs. As Banju advises Kaneki and Tuka to save their butts too, because the 20th ward is next on Aogiri's radar, Ayato breaks in through a window like the head of a SWAT team. As the emotionless siblings have their Addams Family's version of a reunion, Jason enters the shop, shutting down Antiku for personal business. As Kaneki reeks like Rise, Jason decides on kidnapping him when Tuka tries to intervene because she just can't mind her own business for once. As she's swatted away like a fly by Jason, who has now planted his foot on Kanki's chest and has him pinned to the ground, everyone witnesses the twist of Kaneki going ghoul and actually demonstrating enough strength to lift and push Jason's leg off of him. However, Jason wants to remain the MVP in the ghoul game, which is why he simply drives his Kagune through Kaneki, triggering Tuka and Ayato to fight exactly like my brother and I when there's only one slice of pizza left. Once Kaneki has taken Jason's frenzied beating like a super durable punching bag, they take him away, leaving the cafe with a fresh coat of blood paint which Yoshimura sees upon returning. As the men at CCG are gearing up for war due to their rising testosterone levels, the pickpocket boy named Suzuya, who is actually the protege of a senior investigator and low-key the teenage version of Mad Mado, makes a grand entrance. Stitched up in weird places like Frankenstein, this boy dreams of getting a new quink after killing an interesting ghoul. Calling a staff meeting at Anteku, Yoshimura plots to rescue Kaneki on a death mission as they'll face Aogiri and Doves at the same time, but everyone loves Kaneki so much that they agree to put their lives on the line, even his old fling Tsukiyama. Waking up in a dungeon designed by Butch Jason, Kaneki discovers that he's been injected with RC inhibition fluid that will suppress his Kagune activity so that Jason can play a game of operation on him. Now that the 11th ward has been evacuated, the Doves prepare to launch an official attack on the Vermin Ghoul, with Eamon gearing up with the Quinkway that he got from Dead Maido's swag bag. As Jason has tortured the heck out of Kaneki and leaves to give his organs some time to regrow, Banjo secretly sends him a message that he plans to rescue him from this messed up version of 50 Shades of Grey. This is all happening because Jason was once known as Yamori, a ghoul who was arrested by the CCG where a psycho investigator tortured him the same way he's torturing Kaneki right now, forcing him to develop an alternate personality, aka Jason, that was powerful enough for him to break out and be the Sigma of ghouls. As the attack begins, the Antiku squad disguise themselves as ghouls from the Awagiri tree, while a sniper nest of ghouls give Doves a tough time. Like the brilliant maniac that he is, Suzuya steals a motorcycle and rides off into the ghouls' nest like Ghost Rider, reveling in the bloodbath of ghouls that he causes later. While Tuka is looking for Kaneki, she catches Amon's attention, who is closing in on her when other powerful ghouls intervene. Even though Ayato is effortlessly slaying as many men as he does the bad boy look, Yoshimura understands that CCG might win, which is why he entrusts Hanami to a kind ghoul named Kaya and gets involved too. Meanwhile, Tsukiyama, Yomo, and Yuta act like Powerpuff Girls to take down an overpowered ghoul as Eamon appears victorious and joins the rest of the dub squads on the roof. Tuka is still running when she gets attacked by Ayato's Kagune. Talk about an annoying little brother, only for Nishiki to come in between and use his body as a shield to protect Tuka. On the other hand, the Doves encounter the one-eyed owl on the roof, the biggest and baddest ghoul of them all. As our off-brand Jason Voorhees completely shatters Kaneki's spirit, he starts dreaming about Rise again, while also following a counting technique that Jason has forced on him to keep him sane. Witnessing his Deadpool-level regeneration powers fully convinces him that he's a monster, while Rise's ghost takes him back to a core memory of his childhood until Jason yanks him back to his painful present. Like an angry young girl going Hitler on her Barbie, Jason inflicts so much pain on Kaneki that he begs to be killed just so that his misery would end. As Rise's voice inside his head corrupts all the kindness he's kept from his upbringing, Jason forces him to choose between saving one ghoul out of two, which is the worst form of torture he's endured so far. Because Kaneki sticks to his golden retriever persona, Jason kills both ghouls right in front of him, accusing Kaneki of ending their lives. Like a true hater, Rise shows him visions of losing all his loved ones while trolling him for being a weak beta, rejecting all sense of humanity and surpassing Rise in her cruelty and anger towards the unfair world. Kaneki enters his villain era by eating Rise in his mind as his hair turns white, leaving him with a bad hair day for life. Now that the Aogiri needs him fighting against the Doves, Jason approaches Kaneki to feed on him, while also hinting that his friends at Anteku will be next in line to be his breakfast. But Kaneki has had enough of being a doormat that anyone can step on, which is why he breaks out of his chains, wrapping them around Jason's neck while taking a bite out of his neck, which low-key seems like the ghoul version of a hickey. As Jason starts fighting with his ugly-looking Kaguni, Kaneki's leg is twisted and kneaded like Nara Smith's sourdough starter, only for it to regain its shape in no time, because Kaneki is basically invincible at this point. As Jason amplifies his Kaguni and turns into a Neanderthal, proving me wrong because I thought he couldn't get any uglier, Kaneki moves and jumps around him like Spider-Man, while also landing some punches and kicks to make up for all the pain he has tolerated so far. Finally trapping him with his Kagune, Jason throws Kaneki like a frisbee and slams him into a wall, stupidly believing that he still has the upper hand in this boss fight. To correct Jason's Delulu behavior, Kaneki finally reveals his Kagune and elevates himself into the air, while he and Jason keep knocking their Kagunes together, making this fight as long and tedious as the dramatic fights in Dragon Ball Z. Cutting off Jason's Kagune like I should have cut down on my calories, Kaneki smirks as his greatest opponent bites the dust, falling flat on his face. As if all this humiliation wasn't enough, Kaneki reverses the roles with Jason, slowly tearing him apart limb by limb while making him count backwards in 7-second intervals just so that he would hold on to his sanity and feel the pain to a maximum level. As Kaneki sits on Jason's back like a proud hunter, tough guy Jason gives in, struggling to count like a kid with ADHD. Officially starting his life as a true ghoul, Kaneki takes his first official meal in the form of Jason, because kindness is no longer the answer now.